joy of smoking weed and freedom is something money can't buy. Nigerian-born artist Burna, 32, revealed that he turned down a $5 million offer to perform in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates because smoking cannabis is banned in the city, and the punishments are severe. Per the local law, attempting to enter Dubai with cannabis can result in a 5-year sentence, and if you're caught smoking weed there, you might face a minimum of 3 months behind bars, and you'll possibly be deported once you're released. Doing 90 days in prison still does not sound appealing, however. For smokers, the only way to be entirely safe is to simply avoid travel to Dubai. That's probably why Burna turned down the gig, because he smokes pretty much everywhere he goes and there's no way to hide those amounts. Connecticut's Cannabis Regulatory Agency announced last week that it is increasing the amount of cannabis that can be bought in a single transaction by doubling the state's limit on recreational marijuana purchases. Under the new regulations approved by the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection, adult-use cannabis consumers will be permitted to purchase up to a half ounce, about 14 grams, of cannabis flower or its equivalent beginning next month. The limit on purchases of medical marijuana has not been changed. It remains at 5 ounces of cannabis flower or the equivalent monthly, with no limits on purchases in a single transaction. Israel-based software company shares data on increased medical cannabis patient count. The company explained that there has been a rapid rise in medical cannabis patients, about 2,000 in just 1 month. As of November, that brings the total number of medical cannabis patients in Israel to 132,000, with many patients having recently sought medical cannabis to help treat post-trauma conditions. Approximately 60,000 of those patients fall within the age range of 21 to 45, 40,000 are between 46 to 65, and 24,000 are older than 66. The remaining percentage is much smaller, but applies to patients under 20 years old, especially children with autism or those who suffer from epilepsy. A comfortable 57% of voters approved Issue 2 to legalize adult-use cannabis in Ohio, shifting the scales in terms of United States populations with legal pot. Last evening, voters in Ohio approved a ballot proposal, Issue 2, to legalize adult-use cannabis, trouncing voters in opposition to the measure. Last night's outcome makes Ohio the 24th state to allow adult cannabis, 14 of which have done so by way of a public vote. Per the new legislation, adults ages 21 and up can legally buy and possess up to 2.5 ounces of cannabis and grow plants at home, up to 6 plants per person and 12 plants per residence, where at least 2 adults reside. A 10% tax will be imposed on cannabis purchases and will go toward administrative costs, addiction treatment, municipalities with dispensaries, and social equity and jobs programs. Researchers in Italy have found evidence that cannabis was used by residents of Milan hundreds of years ago by studying bones from a 17th century cemetery. In a report on the research, the scientists surmised that weed was likely used recreationally, noting that hospital records from the time do not include cannabis in an inventory of medicinal plants used in Milan in the 1600s. Medical records from the Middle Ages show that cannabis was used in Europe as an anesthetic and as a treatment for gout, urinary infections, and other medical conditions. But in 1484, cannabis was banned in what is now Italy by a decree issued by Pope Innocent VIII. In it, the Pope referred to cannabis as an unholy sacrament and banned the use of the herb by all Catholics. In last week's 7th annual cannabis startup competition at Boston University in Massachusetts, on the same night Ohio became the 24th state to legalize adult-use cannabis, a stoner-friendly app, JoinMe, took home the grand prize. It enables users to locate and meet up and join with stoners who share the same goals and interests. Now in its 6th year, the Boston University alumni founders behind Green Lion Partners sponsored an annual startup competition for current Boston University terriers and alums who are developing innovative cannabis-adjacent companies. Boston University today reports that student and alumni-led teams pitched their business concepts Shark Tank style to a panel of judges for a chance to win $10,000 and free consulting services. Following a major 2018 judgment which decriminalized the private use of cannabis, it appears that South Africa could finally be inching toward legalization of personal cannabis use. However, there are a number of asterisks. as there often are when it comes to cannabis reform. On Tuesday, the South African National Assembly approved a bill that would legalize the personal use of cannabis, Business Live reports. The Cannabis for Private Purposes bill has been in the works since the country decriminalized private cannabis use in 2018 and now heads to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence, while a number of African countries have moved to legalize cannabis cultivation or medical cannabis. The move would set a precedent for adult use cannabis on the continent. Still, the reform measure has one major caveat. Democratic Alliance Member of Parliament Jano Engelbrecht spoke on the bill in the National Assembly, highlighting adults will only be allowed to use cannabis privately in their homes, and sales will still be strictly prohibited should the measure pass. Stoner of the Century Snoop Dogg announced that he's quitting smoking in a post that practically broke the internet. But is it an announcement that he's given up pot, or just a hugely successful stunt? After much consideration and conversation with my family, I've decided to give up smoke, Snoop posted on Instagram, Twitter, and his other social media channels. Please respect my privacy at this time. I'm giving up smoke, he added in the caption. But after all that, some ex-users pointed out some unusual details, and it turns out that the smoke Snoop was actually giving up was smoke stoves, and he's behind the Solo Stove, the world's most popular smokeless fire pit. A particular strain of cannabis flower, literally named Grim Reefer, has been recalled from Arizona dispensaries due to potential mold contamination. The Arizona Department of Health Services issued a recall Monday for certain cannabis products that may have been contaminated with Aspergillus mold. An Arizona marijuana establishment has voluntarily recalled specific products due to possible contamination with Aspergillus, a fungus that can cause allergic reactions or infection, usually in people already sick with something else, said a written press release from the ADHS. A top member of the Sinaloa cartel, responsible for allegedly distributing thousands of pounds of illegal cannabis, was shot and killed in Southern California. Eduardo Escobedo was found dead Thursday, close to the intersection of Rosecrans and Town Avenues in Los Angeles, according to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Escobedo and another man were both killed following a shooting incident. The Los Angeles Times reports that Escobedo is a convicted drug trafficker nicknamed El Mago, which is the magician in Spanish. Escobedo was the primary local cannabis distributor for Ivan Archivaldo Guzman Salazar, the son of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman.